Hey YouTube land, I've got a different kind of video for you today. So you see, I've been setting up a new studio space at my house and I ran across this issue that I'd actually seen before, but I finally decided that I needed to address it. Since I didn't find any videos out on YouTube saying what would be what I would call a great solution. There were some solutions, but nothing I'd call great. I thought I'd give my contribution to this YouTube community since I've learned how to do all kinds of things throughout the years through YouTube searches. You know, someone who's my age can remember back when we had to either just know somebody who knew how to do something or figure it out on your own. But now being able to go out on YouTube and do a search for anything from how to fix things on automotive stuff to you name it. So it's just great. So here's my 2 cents on it, and here we go. So has anybody out there ever connected a powered studio monitor and heard this sound? Yeah, okay, that's annoying, isn't it? So I came across this a few years ago when I bought a pair of Nord speakers to go along with my Nord Grand keyboard. And after becoming frustrated, I finally sent the speakers back into Sweetwater. Oh, real quick, a shout out to Sweetwater, a great place to go get musical equipment and any kind of broadcasting gear, anything you need from that standpoint. They're great. And shout out to Christian Good, who's my sales rep. He's a great person to work with and can help you out with all kinds of problems. But anyway, Sweetwater has a great warranty on all of their stuff, and so I decided I was going to use it for the first time ever and send these speakers back in and say, hey, look, they got a noise in them, and I don't know what to do. So they accepted them, they took a look at them, and I'm sure they thought that I was totally insane because when they hooked them up, they were just fine, had no issues. So I got those speakers back, and I just decided to move on to something else. I donated those speakers to my son, who also plays keyboard and who lives in a different location, and I just moved on. But that leads us to today, and so I'm moving my studio setup from the other end of the house over to this new end of the house, where the problem is more noticeable than the other. I'll get to that in a minute, but why that might be. But anyway, I started having the problem again. And so you see, I've got these nice Yamaha HS7 studio monitors, and they consistently have this noise on this side of the house. So I figured out, let's just think about it for a minute and let's troubleshoot. So first of all, I'm using a Black Lion audio power conditioner, right? So that should give you clean power and make sure that you got no noise coming in through the power signals. And there's no inputs connected to my speakers at all. Nothing. So all it is power. You turn it on and you get that annoying sound. So at this point, I figured it had to be some kind of electromagnetic interference going on, and I knew what the culprit was. So if you look over here behind my window, we have a cell tower that has all kind of antennas on it, and who knows what kind of electromagnetic radiation is coming out of that. So why did I not see that on the other side of the house? Well, I happen to have a metal roof and a large back porch area with that metal roof over it, and I think it kind of blocks out some of the signals on that other side of the house from the height that it's at versus this side of the house and the signals coming straight through the window that I've got right here going right towards it. So what do? You search the interwebs and look for solutions or anybody else experiencing that problem. And so I found a couple of folks said, hey, I just wrapped my speakers in aluminum foil and that got rid of the problem. I tried that, of course, just to see what would happen. Yes, it did reduce the noise. I wouldn't say that it eliminated it altogether, but it did reduce it. So that kind of says, okay, yeah, it is electromagnetic interference kind of a problem. But who wants to set up a nice place and have nice Yamaha speakers with a bunch of aluminum foil wrapped around it? So I decided let's look for something else. Somebody also had said, hey, they got a Mylar emergency thermal blanket and wrapped their speakers in that. And I'm sure that was very effective, but again, I kind of wanted my speakers to look like speakers and not have a bunch of stuff over it. So searching around a little bit more, I look at this company in Minnesota that sells electromagnetic frequency clothing and fabric protection from EMF radiation. The place is called redemptionshield.com. I'll post a link of that in the description if you're interested. And I found that they sell military grade Faraday fabric, and they sell it by the yard. And I said, okay, that's got to be it. And don't quote me exactly on the specs. Go to their site, but it said something like either can eliminate frequencies or reduce. Sorry, it's all in the amount of dBs that they can reduce a signal up to, I believe it was 10 gigahertz. Maybe it's 20, but maybe 10 gigahertz. Go look on the website. So I figured I'd get a yard of that fabric and try to mount that inside my speaker caves, inside the cabinet, and that way it'd still look like speakers, but it would have some Faraday cage surrounding the electronics on the inside, because that's what's really happening is you're getting this electromagnetic signals that are coming in. It's getting picked up by the electronics on the amplifier, and the amplifier is taking those and basically it turns it into signals that come out through your speakers. So yeah, I know that's going to void the warranty when you take the speakers apart, but it's something you got to do sometime. So I decided I was going to do that. And so I didn't do a video of actually going through the process of taking the speakers apart and gluing everything on the inside of the cabinet. And you probably want to thank me for that, because I'm not your great hobbyist who knows how to glue things all nicely. It was pretty ugly, to be totally honest. But it got the job done, and the sound went away, and that's the key thing. So I will cut away now, and we'll take a look at the inside of the speakers, and I'll give you some pointers on some things that I found out. So if that helps you, that's great. And I'll give you some pictures that I actually did take of the inside of the cabinet throughout the process. So with that, I will say that a yard of the fabric worked great for the pair of HS7s that I've got. Even had a swatch left over. Let me see if I can get that. So pretty significant size swatch that's left over, and if I can get this in the camera, you can see it's a pretty thin fabric, and it's actually got some kind of a metal mesh inside. I don't know if it's nickel or whatever. Go back to the website and look at it, but it's a conductive material that, again, it catches those electromagnetic frequencies, and we'll talk about grounding and getting those to make sure that you got the best reduction that you can get out of that. But the 1 yard worked well with the HS7s. I've also had some HS8s, and I know that the size of those, you'll end up with fabric left over. So 1 yard will do. Again, go look at the current price on that. We're talking between 20 to 30 bucks for a yard of that fabric. It is expensive as far as fabric goes, but if you think of it as a Faraday cage, pretty cheap in the end run. So shout out to redemptionshield.com. So let's go take a look inside the cabinets. Okay, so here we have the back side of the Yamaha HS7 studio monitor. And to do the full installation, you're really going to need to take the two speakers off the front panel. You can do that by just removing these 4 screws here to take this entire tweeter panel out. There's no need to do the inner screws. That just takes the tweeter apart. You won't need to do that. And there's actually 2 sections here. You've got the screws here for this plate that goes around, this white plate. And inside that, you've got some more Phillips screws that will need to be taken out to actually take the larger speaker out. Be careful when you're putting them back together, because you'll need to get the inner component aligned so that both screw holes are available, both the ones that are used to actually install the speaker itself, and then the screw holes for this panel that goes on the outside. So that is something that I didn't do the first time and had to take apart again to get it right. Don't worry about knowing which wires go to which part. You will need to know which goes to the tweeter versus the main woofer speaker here. So, but as far as the polarity, it is sized so that you can only put them on to the correct position. So don't worry about that. So coming to the back, there's 10 screws that you need to take off to get the back panel out. I've already done that. You can see the 4 on this side, 4 on that side, and the 2 in the middle for the 10. So let's just pull this off and see what we got here. Okay, it's kind of tight because the actual cables going to the speakers are still attached. So that's why, again, if you take those speakers out, it makes it a lot easier to get to the cables and to pull those wires off to do what you need to do there. Let's see if we can kind of get a better picture inside of here, because what I want you to see is that you'll have to take out, if I can get some better focus there. There's the sound dampening material, and it's just glued in place in there, so you'll really need to rip that out. It's going to tear things apart a little bit, but again, I was willing to do that and just glue it back together after I was done. So actually, this is the fabric that you can see here on the side. It's wrapped around all the wood pieces on the inside, and I glued it down to the inside wood cabinet. And then you've got the gluing to the actual Faraday fabric on top of that. Now, what I wanted to point out here is that if you take a look on the back panel, you got an input section here, and there's actually an electronic circuit board. Be careful if you are in some colder climates. You may want some electric static discharge mat or some grounding equipment. For us here in Florida, that's not a big deal. It's pretty much inside 50% humidity all year round. But you do have this board here, and what I wanted to point out is that you're going to need to figure out a way to make sure that the Faraday fabric gets grounded, so any signals that come in actually go back through the ground pin of your power source. So what I chose to do there, and this was the worst of the 2 speakers because it was the second one and I was getting tired of doing this, but on the first one I tried to make sure that it was a real tight seal and that the fabric went around the entire edges that you see here. You can see some of the fabric here in this area. And the reason for that is if you take a look at the back of this panel, kind of hard to get to with it not taken apart. But the power that comes in, and the connector is actually on the back of this. So there you can see that the actual power strip, if you look closely in there, is actually grounded to the back plate. So the back plate is the grounding for the entire electrical system. So I've heard some people say that putting some foil around the heat sink in the back might help because maybe it's a big antenna. Well, I agree it could be a big antenna. It's actually grounded to the back plate, so it would actually ground out all the signals, so I wouldn't worry about that. That's definitely not where you're getting the problem from. It's really coming in through the wood cabinet itself. Obviously, you can't get all of it because you'd have to actually cover up the speakers on the inside, and don't do that. That's not a good idea. So what I wanted to point out is you need to be careful with the placement of your material, because if you don't get it tight enough on the inside, you might remember the material has some conductive properties, so you could ground out some of the electronics here. And on this second speaker, because I wasn't as careful, I had to go back and cut some of that out because that's exactly what I did. Fortunately, it didn't fry any of the electronics. It just grounded the input signal. So when I went to go connect a signal, I didn't get any sound coming out through the speaker. So after cutting that out, it no longer was grounding the input pins, and the sound came through just fine. Likewise, you definitely, I did know that I did not want anything down here because you don't want to actually connect your positive to negative grounding here through this power circuit board. So be careful on this side. Now this other side, I'll tell you, here's where you might actually get some good results. You don't have to worry about it so much here. You do have your power transformer down here on the bottom. Maybe stay away from it, but it's kind of recessed a little bit, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. But if your fabric actually touches this large heat sink, again, don't worry about that. That's probably a good thing, because that's where your material will get some grounding along with the inside plate of this back panel. And again, that inside plate of the back panel is all attached to the heat sink and attached to the ground pin, which is going to ground out your signal that's causing the noise. So, bottom line lesson learned, don't worry about your fabric being a little loose on this side. It might help you out in the long run. But if it's loose on this side, you'll run into problems, so don't do that. Even cut it out if you had to, and that's how I actually went and fixed this right side. It's actually not, as you can see, electrically grounded around these sides as nice as the first speaker that I had done. But that's okay, because the fabric is all connected and it gets its grounding through this left-hand side through the heatsink. So that's it, and you put it all back together. And we'll talk again on the other side, and I'll show you some of the results, and which is really unremarkable. You'll just hear no sound. So see you there. So there you have it. That's pretty much it. And that was my solution anyway. I hope that helps out somebody out there. It certainly got rid of my problems. Again, I'll post the before and after, and I apologize. I did have my phone on portrait mode versus landscape for that. Oh well, that's what happens sometimes. But that'll give you a before and after. Again, the after is just a bunch of no sound, and hope that helps you out. So, speaking of redemption and shielding, this channel is Beach Views of Prophecy, and I hope that you know the redemptive power of Jesus and what he did for us, and that your heart is shielded through him from the prince of the power of the air, as the Bible says. And so if you don't know what I mean with Jesus and how he can help us and save us from the predicament that we're in, or don't even know that we're in a predicament, I encourage you to check out this video here. It is good for the Christmas season. It reminds us of why Jesus even came to begin with. So check that out if you would. See you later.